So now let's invite Miss Maya on stage. Please give her a loud applause.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying.
When it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. JCI President Ms. Nurul Afandi, JCI members, organizing committee, as well as Dato' Mazlan Kamis from Yayasan Inovasi Malaysia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like maybe the light should be turned up because everyone's going to go into the afternoon nap mode. And my presentation, as much as I can try, will be a listing of trying to share a little bit what the Human Rights International Development Framework looks like, and hopefully be able to show you what are the links in terms of the businesses and the different entrepreneur. Yeah, that's a lot better. I can see your faces, so you can't sleep on me. So how businesses can actually play a role in creating social change. So let me start. So my presentation here I called From Good Intentions to Significant Actions. And it's actually a quotation from the most recent flagship report from the UN Global Compact, which was released 2 days ago. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so I'm here on behalf of the UN. I'm also here on behalf of UNICEF and my representative, who is the panel judges, a member of the panel judges, Ms. Vivina Belmonte. There's 3 categories of my presentation today. One, I'll share with you a little bit what UN Global Compact is about. And bear with me, there will be some text, but it's really just to give you a familiarity of the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact. And the second part will be going through a little bit what the UN Development Goals is about. For us in the UN, it's basically our core mandate of work. And then third and last, I'll be sharing a little bit children's rights and business principles, which was launched last year to give you kind of an understanding of what are the international principles that exist specifically for children and business. Okay, so here's what I mean by text. So the UN Global Compact is actually a strategic policy initiative for businesses that are committed to aligning their operations and strategies within this 10 universally accepted principles. It's actually divided in 4 different areas, and it's guided by 4 different international frame, which is the Declaration of Human Rights, International Labour Organization, Fundamental of Rights at Work, and then the third one is the Rio Declaration of Environment and Development, and the fourth, and the most, I think also quite important but not the least, is the UN Anti-Corruption Convention. So I'm not going to go through specifically what all those 10 principles are. You can maybe just, if you want to know more about it, go through their website and take a look at it. But I think what's important to stress is that in JCI, you are supporting and contributing towards encouraging businesses to consider and look at these principles. These are non-binding principles, but it does give you a direction of how to see your business and what it is that you can do to ensure your business runs ethically well, operationally enhanced, and ensuring that all your supply chain is in compliance, or if some, maybe we'll go beyond compliance. So in a nutshell, it's really about promoting responsible business. So it's not about going to the business in terms of, yes, we want profits, but part of that journey is also making sure that we're responsible in how we do our business. Okay. 2 days ago, the flagship report of the UN Global Compact came out. And this is the 2013 report. Every year they have a report. And one of the things that strike me a lot is they talked about good intentions to significant action. In the Asian culture, we always have good intentions to give, which I think one of the finalists mentioned. But giving, with just the intention of just giving and then presenting a mock check and showing that you're doing good for the community, but not creating the action that you want, may not be as impactful. So what I'm here today is actually trying to instill how we want to give, but make sure that when we give, we create the actions that are going to be significant and sustainable, not just within the business that you're running, but also in the community that you're working in. So in this flagship report, it was launched 2 days ago, like I said, surveyed over 2,000 companies in 113 countries, and it's really looking at how addressing human rights is not only good for business, but is also making progress towards societal challenges, for example, in education, health, and poverty. However, in the report, they claim that yes, there has been progress made, but there are still gaps that remain. And some of these gaps are that companies say a lot, but they don't necessarily do it. So that's one of the gaps. The second gap is that the size is the most significant factor in sustainability performance. So in the past, people say, oh, CSR is only for the big companies. The small companies don't have the cost, don't have the manpower, are not in a position to contribute back or to do a CSR. But I think that idea is changing now. Even if you're a small Sinjan Berhad company versus a major MNC company, you can actually do a CSR initiative, and I'll give you some examples later. And when I talk about CSR initiative, I'm talking about nothing that's philanthropy-based. Philanthropy is good, it's great. However, there are some examples of how to make it more sustainable in your business. The third one is that supply chains are usually the roadblocks to improve performance, because we know a lot of the vendors and the suppliers, it's very hard for companies to ensure that they comply. And in some cases, for some companies, they're going beyond compliance. So they're actually going beyond the minimum standards of what the vendors are requested to do. And the fourth and last one is that they also found out about 70% of the companies that they survey are actually already in line with a lot of the UN goals. So that brings me back to the next slide. The UN goals of what I think our MCs had introduced earlier is the UN Development Goal. Now, in the UN Development Goal, we have 8 goals. I'm not going to go to the specifics, but I think it's important to note that there is such a frame internationally. And the businesses here in Malaysia is about contributing towards those national development, because these goals are actually then adopted at the national level and are recognized by the national government. The goals are, one is on eradicate poverty, achieve primary education, promote gender equality, and empower women. Fourth is reduce child mortality. Fifth, maternal health. 6 is on combating HIV and AIDS. 7 is on environment. And 8 is about global partnership. Where does business fall into all of this? They can fall in all 8, depending on how you want to work in achieving these international goals. It ends in 2015, the 2015 Millennium Development Goals. There are current discussions going on now in terms of what is the next set of international development framework going to look like for all countries to adopt. And a lot of the discussion has been centered around health, governance, inequality, environmental sustainability, food security, nutrition are among the few. But I think it's interesting to say that a lot of this discussion, people are starting to already give a term called Sustainable Development Goals. And it's called the new SDGs. So it's not going to be called MDGs, possibly going to be called SDGs. But Sustainable Development Goals will actually encourage more and more companies and businesses and people to be on board on sustainable development. And any business you're doing now may change in the next 10 years. Your key goal here is to make sure that you remain relevant within the next 10 years and beyond. And how do you remain relevant in a country or in a market that's becoming more and more globalized? We heard earlier just now that the Global Art finalist wants to establish their franchise in other countries. And that's reaching out to the global market. You're looking beyond the national Malaysian market, and in some cases beyond the regional market. So those are the things that you might want to consider. How do you make yourself sustainable? Okay. Really quickly, in 2011, one of the things that has changed is that in 2011, the Human Rights Council has endorsed the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. So basically, this slide is really trying to tell you that I think in the next couple of years, businesses cannot run away from human rights. Either you're going to be encouraged by international pressure or national pressure, or maybe even tax incentives. These are some of the things that are going to be a reality to the way you do your business, the way you do responsible business. Yes, human rights is a national government, or what we call state duty to protect. And we are encouraging that businesses respect it and support it. Not so much about saying that, oh, it should just only be with the government, but businesses also have a role to support it. And then the last one here, we're talking about remedy. Remedy in the sense of, if you are engaging with the people in human rights and you have some issues, how do you communicate and create a communication medium to ensure that these victims are discussed with or communicated to understand better how they can improve their lives? Okay, so then this brings me back to what is the rationale of having principles on children? Who cares? My business doesn't have anything to do with children. But wait, it does. Directly, in some of the finalists, we see that they are already working directly with children. But indirectly, your businesses, each and every one of your businesses, is actually affecting child. You will look at the families, you will look at the employees, you will look at the community you work with. We had Ms. Adeline just now talking about people that are encouraging on technical skills in the automotive industry. A lot of this may or may not come from school children who decide to not want to continue their education but want to develop skill sets that are actually very much needed in the economy and the labor workforce in Malaysia. So we know that businesses have an impact on children. And we know that businesses can be champions for children. And we also know that even though the government is in the prime seat to lead this, there is a role for businesses to encourage children's rights. Okay, really quick, I'm going to go through the children's rights and business principles. This is basically our set of principles that we launched together with UN Global Compact and Save the Children, which is an international organization. We have gone through the process of maybe over 30, 40 countries now have launched it. It had involved 600 people in 11 cities when we decided to have it. And we have, in true UNICEF form, where we encourage the opinions of children, engaged over 400 children in 9 countries when we developed the children's rights and business principles. This is how it looks like. It's actually 10 principles. It goes beyond just the area of child labor. So the UN Global Compact will focus on labor issues, but this one specifically has a children's rights lens to it. Again, it's the corporate commitment to support children's rights. Okay. It's developed in 3 different categories: the workplace, the marketplace, the community and environment. And principle 1 is basically the rights integration, which is kind of the overarching principle to bring all of the different categories together. So examples. So I'm going to try my best to give you examples of what companies have done in some of these areas. I'm going to go to number 3 when we look at family-friendly workplace. The work that we've done with Companies Commission, we've developed business practice circulars. And the business practice circulars is talking about establishing childcare centers. And many will say, well, this is childcare center, it's going to cost too much money. Yes, it's not going to cost that much money. depending on how big your company is. But there are alternatives in terms of if you're not going to have a childcare center at the workplace, your company can maybe provide subsidies or incentives for the parents to give childcare like allowance or something like that. And then the parents or the employee can top it up and pay themselves too. But I think it's important that in this world today, more and more employees are depending depending on childcare centers, and makes your business more competitive when you have something that retains these parents and these employees to stay with you. The other example I want to give is a nursing lactation room. A lot of us talk about, oh, there's no space for a lactation room. Well, everybody has an office. Everybody has a meeting room. In UNICEF, we've transformed our meeting room into a lactation room in certain hours of the day. So it's actually dedicated for mothers who recently just come back from maternity leave to actually lactate in there, and there's some privacy, and people know when the times are dedicated to be lactation room. Okay. Good. Okay. The marketplace, here we're talking about products and services, making sure that responsible marketing and advertising. Are we encouraging children to eat more sugar and fatty foods, or are we encouraging foods to be marketed to show more healthy foods? And I like the example of Mr. Adnan Lee talks about fruits. I think in Malaysia, we all know obesity rates is the highest in the region. How do you actually encourage your products to fit towards addressing national health problems? And in Malaysia right now, I know obesity or overnutrition is a problem there. Then finally, community and environment. These are just some of the lists. Number 10, support community and government efforts for children. Malaysian government has a very strong mandate and commitment on CSR. It's very clear on promotion of public-private partnerships. Again, whatever it is that your businesses or your entrepreneur ideas are doing will feed into the national priorities that have been identified. Last but not least, I just want to share with you that we have come up with these principles, and our next step now is developing implementation tools for companies to actually use and consider how it is that they want to adopt certain practices, whether in the marketplace, the workplace, or in the community and the environment that they're working, to ensure that they support the realization of children's rights. And this is my final slide, so I encourage and welcome all of you to take a look at our website if you want to know more. And thank you very much for your attention. And yes, that's it. Thank you.